Maya Rodriguez stepped off the bus at Camp Wilson with a worn duffel bag slung over her shoulder. The morning sun cast long shadows across the training facility as she surveyed her new temporary home. At first glance, she looked like any other new recruit. Average height, quiet demeanor, and clothes that had seen better days. The other trainees barely glanced her way as she walked toward the registration building. Inside the main hall, dozens of young men and women in military fatigues were gathered in small groups, talking loudly about their weekend plans and upcoming exercises. Maya kept to herself, finding a seat in the back corner where she could observe without drawing attention. She had learned long ago that blending in was often the best strategy in new environments. "Fresh meat," whispered Jake Morrison to his buddies, nodding toward Maya. Jake was the unofficial leader of the most aggressive group of trainees at the camp. He had been there for 8 months and considered himself practically an expert on military life, despite never having seen real combat. His followers, Marcus and Tony, snickered at his comment. "Looks like she got lost on her way to summer camp," Marcus added, causing more laughter from their circle. They had made it their mission to break in every new arrival, especially those who looked vulnerable or unprepared for military life. Maya heard their comments but showed no reaction. She had faced worse than teenage bullies during her 6 years as a Navy SEAL. The classified missions in hostile territories, the life-or-death situations where split-second decisions meant survival or failure, those experiences had taught her patience and self-control that these trainees could never imagine. The orientation officer, Sergeant Williams, called for attention and began explaining the daily schedule, rules, and expectations. Maya listened carefully while mentally noting the layout of the facility, emergency exits, and potential weaknesses in security. Old habits died hard, and situational awareness had kept her alive more times than she could count. After the briefing, trainees were assigned to barracks and given time to settle in. Maya found herself in Building C, sharing space with 12 other recruits. As she unpacked her few belongings, she noticed Jake's group had strategically positioned themselves near her bunk. They were clearly planning something, probably thinking she would be an easy target for their initiation pranks. "Hey, new girl," Jake called out as Maya folded her clothes with military precision. "You sure you're in the right place? This isn't exactly a vacation resort." His friends gathered around, blocking her path to the bathroom. Maya looked up calmly, meeting Jake's gaze without flinching. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she replied in a steady voice that carried just enough authority to make Jake's confidence waver slightly. There was something in her eyes that didn't match her unassuming appearance. A hardness that spoke of real experience. "We'll see about that," Jake muttered, but he stepped back slightly. Something about this new recruit felt different, though he couldn't put his finger on what exactly made him uneasy. That evening during dinner, Maya sat alone while observing the social dynamics of the group. She identified the leaders, the followers, and the potential allies. Jake's crew dominated the largest table, loudly sharing stories of their training exercises and talking about who they planned to welcome next. Their eyes frequently drifted to Maya's table, and she knew it was only a matter of time before they made their move. As night fell and lights out was called, Maya lay in her bunk listening to the sounds of the barracks settling down. She could hear whispered conversations and stifled laughter from Jake's corner. They were definitely planning something for tomorrow. Probably during the obstacle course training when instructors would be distracted and accidents could be easily explained away. Maya smiled slightly in the darkness. These trainees had no idea what they were dealing with. She had survived Taliban ambushes, extracted hostages from terrorist compounds, and completed missions that would remain classified for decades. A group of overconfident teenagers playing soldier would be nothing more than a minor inconvenience. But she would let them make the first move. Sometimes the best lessons came from allowing bullies to reveal their true nature before teaching them the consequences of their actions. Maya closed her eyes and began planning her response. Drawing on years of tactical training and psychological warfare experience, tomorrow would be very educational for everyone involved. The next morning arrived with the harsh sound of reveille echoing through the barracks. Maya was already awake, having developed the habit of rising before dawn during her years of active duty. She watched as the other trainees stumbled out of their bunks, grumbling and cursing the early hour. Jake and his crew moved with the swagger of those who thought they owned the place, already plotting their next move against the new arrival. During breakfast, Maya noticed the subtle signs of their preparation. Marcus kept glancing at his watch while Tony whispered something to a few other trainees who looked uncomfortable but afraid to refuse whatever was being asked of them. Jake himself maintained a facade of casual conversation, while his eyes tracked Maya's every movement. "Obstacle course training this morning," announced Sergeant Williams as he entered the mess hall. "Full gear, no exceptions. Anyone who can't complete the course in under 15 minutes will be running extra laps tonight." The announcement sent a ripple of nervous energy through the room. The obstacle course was notorious for exposing weaknesses and creating opportunities for accidents. Maya finished her breakfast methodically, noting how Jake's group exchanged meaningful glances. She had seen similar behavior from enemy combatants preparing an ambush. The same barely contained excitement mixed with predatory focus. These trainees thought they were subtle, but their intentions were written all over their faces. As the group moved toward the equipment shed to collect gear, Jake made his move. "Rodriguez, right?" he said, falling into step beside Maya. "First time doing military training?" His tone was friendly enough, but there was an underlying mockery that his friends appreciated with barely suppressed grins. "Something like that," Maya replied noncommittally, hefting her pack with ease that surprised Jake. Most new recruits struggled with the 40-pound gear load, but Maya adjusted the straps like she had done it thousands of times before. "The course can be pretty dangerous if you don't know what you're doing," Marcus chimed in from behind them. "Lots of places where someone could get hurt if they're not careful." The threat was thinly veiled, meant to intimidate Maya into submission or withdrawal from the training. "I'm sure I'll figure it out," Maya said calmly, checking her equipment with professional efficiency. Her movements were economical and practiced, but the trainees were too focused on their planned harassment to notice the telltale signs of extensive military experience. At the obstacle course, Sergeant Williams explained the route: rope climbing, wall scaling, crawling under barbed wire, balance beam crossing, and a final sprint to the finish line. "Injuries happen when people get careless or try to show off," he warned, his gaze sweeping over the assembled trainees. "Help your fellow soldiers, but don't compromise your own safety." Jake volunteered to go in the same group as Maya, along with Marcus and Tony. They positioned themselves strategically around her, making it look like helpful camaraderie to the instructors, while actually setting up their trap. Their plan was simple but effective: create situations where Maya would struggle or fail, then escalate the harassment until she either quit or provided them with an excuse to get more physical. "I'll go right behind you on the rope climb," Jake told Maya with fake concern, "just in case you need help." What he actually planned was to grab the rope while she was climbing, causing her to lose balance and potentially fall. Marcus would be waiting at the wall climb to accidentally kick debris down at her, while Tony had loosened some of the stakes holding the barbed wire section. As they approached the starting line, Maya could feel the tension radiating from her would-be tormentors. Their breathing had changed, becoming slightly faster with anticipation. Their body language showed suppressed aggression, and she noticed Tony's hands flexing repeatedly, a nervous habit common among inexperienced fighters preparing for violence. The whistle blew, and the group began running toward the first obstacle. Maya maintained a steady pace, staying close enough to Jake's group to not arouse suspicion, while keeping her senses alert for their inevitable move. She had survived situations where the wrong step meant death, so dodging the amateur machinations of camp bullies would be almost refreshingly simple. As they reached the rope climbing station, Jake positioned himself directly behind Maya as planned. "Need a boost?" he asked mockingly, reaching for the rope she was about to climb. His friends spread out to block the view of instructors and other trainees, creating a pocket of isolation where they could operate without immediate interference. Maya gripped the rope and began climbing with fluid, powerful movements that immediately caught Jake off guard. She moved up the 30-foot rope like it was a ladder, using a technique that spoke of extensive training and experience. Her speed and efficiency were so impressive that even Marcus stopped to stare instead of executing his part of the plan. "What the hell?" Tony muttered, watching Maya reach the top and ring the bell before sliding down in a controlled descent that took less than 90 seconds total. Professional soldiers took longer to complete that obstacle, and she had made it look effortless. Jake's confidence wavered as he realized this new recruit was not what she appeared to be. But pride and peer pressure drove him forward with the rest of their plan. They couldn't back down now without losing face in front of the entire training group. Maya had just made their harassment feel personal instead of routine. The wall-climbing obstacle loomed ahead. A 12-foot wooden barrier designed to test upper body strength and teamwork. Most trainees needed help from their partners to get over it, which was exactly what Marcus was counting on. He had positioned himself to be Maya's climbing partner, planning to let her fall at the critical moment when she would be most vulnerable. "Come on, Rodriguez, I'll give you a leg up," Marcus called out, interlacing his fingers to create a step. His plan was to boost her halfway up, then suddenly withdraw support, sending her crashing back to the ground. The fall wouldn't be fatal, but it would be painful and embarrassing enough to establish their dominance. Maya approached the wall with the same calm demeanor she had maintained all morning. She placed her foot in Marcus's hands and felt him begin to lift her up. Just as she predicted, when she was about 6 feet off the ground, Marcus suddenly stepped back and let go, expecting her to fall backward onto the hard-packed dirt. Instead, Maya's hands shot out and grabbed the top edge of the wall with perfect timing. Her core strength allowed her to pull herself up and over in one fluid motion, landing softly on the other side while Marcus stood there with his mouth open in shock. She had anticipated his betrayal and turned it into an opportunity to demonstrate capabilities that left the other trainees speechless. "Lucky grab," Jake muttered, but doubt was creeping into his voice. 2 obstacles in, and Maya had not only avoided their traps, but had excelled beyond anything they had expected from a new recruit. The other trainees in their group were starting to exchange uncertain glances, wondering if they had chosen the wrong target. At the barbed wire crawl, Tony's sabotage became apparent when Maya approached the loosened stakes. Any normal trainee would have grabbed the unstable support and potentially gotten tangled in the wire or cut by the barbs. Maya paused for just a moment, her trained eyes assessing the deliberately compromised setup, then smoothly adjusted her approach. She low-crawled under the wire with textbook military precision, keeping her body perfectly flat and moving with controlled speed that spoke of countless hours of similar training. Her technique was so flawless that Sergeant Williams, watching from the sidelines, made a note on his clipboard and nodded approvingly. "Where did she learn to move like that?" whispered one of the other trainees who had been reluctantly helping with Jake's plan. The question hung in the air as more observers began to realize they were watching someone with genuine military experience, not a confused newcomer who had stumbled into the wrong program. Jake's frustration was building with each failed attempt to sabotage Maya's performance. The balance beam obstacle was next, and he decided to take a more direct approach. The narrow wooden beam stretched across a muddy pit, requiring careful footwork and concentration to traverse without falling. As Maya began crossing the beam, Jake accidentally bumped into the support structure, causing it to shake violently. Most trainees would have lost their balance immediately and fallen into the mud below. Maya simply adjusted her stance and continued forward without breaking stride, her equilibrium and body control far superior to anything Jake had encountered among the other recruits. "This is impossible," Marcus hissed to Tony as they watched Maya complete the beam crossing with professional grace. "She's making us look like idiots." The other trainees were beginning to gather and watch, drawn by the impressive display of skill that was completely out of place in a basic training environment. The final sprint to the finish line was Jake's last chance to salvage his reputation and assert dominance over the new arrival. He positioned himself to Maya's left as they approached the final stretch, planning to shoulder check her into the barriers that lined the track. It was a move that could cause serious injury if executed properly, but his anger and wounded pride had overridden his common sense. As they ran toward the finish line, Jake made his move, throwing his shoulder toward Maya's ribs with enough force to send most people sprawling. But Maya had been tracking his position and intentions from the moment they started running together. Years of combat awareness had taught her to read aggressive body language and anticipate attacks from multiple angles simultaneously. At the last second, Maya sidestepped with minimal movement, causing Jake to miss his target completely and stumble forward off balance. His momentum carried him straight into one of the barrier posts, and he went down hard in front of the entire group of trainees and instructors. Maya crossed the finish line with a time that would have impressed seasoned soldiers, while Jake struggled to get up from the dirt with a bruised ego and scraped knees. The power dynamic had shifted completely in front of everyone present, and Jake's authority among the trainees evaporated in that moment of public failure. Sergeant Williams approached Maya with curiosity evident on his face. "Outstanding performance, Rodriguez. Where did you complete your prior service?" The question caused a stir among the nearby trainees, many of whom were realizing for the first time that they had been targeting someone with actual military experience. "Various locations, Sergeant," Maya replied respectfully, giving nothing away while maintaining the protocol appropriate for addressing a superior officer. Her answer was perfectly military in its precision and deliberate vagueness, leaving room for interpretation while avoiding any classified details. Jake limped over to where his friends were standing, humiliation burning in his chest as he watched the other trainees regard Maya with new respect and wariness. His carefully constructed image as the alpha of the training group had been destroyed by someone he had dismissed as an easy target. The harassment campaign was backfiring spectacularly, but his pride wouldn't let him walk away without one more attempt to reassert control. That evening, the atmosphere in the barracks was noticeably different. Word had spread quickly about Maya's performance on the obstacle course, and many trainees found excuses to walk past her bunk or strike up conversations. Jake and his inner circle sat huddled in their corner, speaking in hushed tones while shooting angry glances in her direction. "She made us look like complete amateurs," Tony complained, nursing a bruised ego along with the minor cuts he had sustained when his own sabotage plan backfired. "Everyone's talking about how she destroyed the course record. Some of the guys are saying she must be special forces or something." Jake's jaw was clenched tight with rage and humiliation. He had built his reputation on being the toughest trainee in the camp, and Maya had effortlessly dismantled that image in front of everyone who mattered. The other trainees were no longer looking to him for leadership, and he could feel his influence slipping away with each passing hour. "I don't care if she's a Navy SEAL," Jake snarled, though he was closer to the truth than he realized. "Nobody comes into my camp and shows me up like that. We need to send a message that makes it clear who's really in charge here." Marcus shifted uncomfortably at the escalating tone in Jake's voice. What had started as routine hazing was transforming into something more dangerous and personal. "Maybe we should just back off, man. She's obviously not some scared newbie we can push around. This could get us all in serious trouble." "Are you backing down?" Jake's voice carried a threatening edge that made Marcus flinch. "Because if you can't handle this, maybe you're not cut out for my crew either." The ultimatum forced Marcus to choose between his growing unease and his position in the group's hierarchy. Maya was aware of their continued planning, but she was also observing the broader dynamics at play in the barracks. Several trainees approached her throughout the evening, some offering genuine friendship, and others clearly hoping to align themselves with what they perceived as the new power structure. "That was incredible today," said Sarah Chen, a trainee from Ohio who had been struggling with the physical demands of the program. "I've never seen anyone move like that. Could you maybe show me some techniques for the rope climb?" Her request was sincere, born from a desire to improve, rather than to gather intelligence or curry favor. "Sure," Maya replied simply. She had always believed in helping fellow service members improve their skills, and Sarah's honest approach reminded her of the positive aspects of military camaraderie that she genuinely missed from her active duty days. As Maya spent time helping other trainees with their technique and sharing basic training tips, Jake's isolation became more apparent. His followers were beginning to drift away, drawn by the practical benefits of learning from someone with obvious expertise. The social order he had worked months to establish was crumbling in a matter of hours. "This ends tonight," Jake declared to his remaining loyal supporters during a late-night meeting behind the equipment shed. "I don't care what it takes or what we have to do. That woman is going to learn that I run things here, and everyone else is going to see what happens when someone challenges my authority." The plan they hatched was significantly more aggressive than their previous attempts. They would wait until after lights out, then corner Maya when she went to use the bathroom facilities. With no witnesses and no instructors around, they could escalate to physical intimidation without immediate consequences. Jake convinced himself that once Maya experienced real fear, she would either submit to his dominance or leave the program entirely. What Jake and his accomplices didn't understand was that Maya had been tracking their movements and conversations throughout the day. Her years of intelligence gathering had taught her to read hostile intentions long before they became actionable threats. She knew they were planning something more serious, and she was prepared to end their harassment permanently. At 2 in the morning, Maya made her move. She quietly left her bunk and headed toward the bathroom, giving every appearance of being unaware of the ambush waiting for her. Jake and 3 remaining followers had positioned themselves in the dark corridor, ready to surround her away from the sleeping quarters where their confrontation might be witnessed. As Maya rounded the corner into the isolated hallway, Jake stepped out of the shadows with Marcus and Tony flanking him. A 4th trainee, David Walsh, blocked the retreat path behind her. They had her outnumbered 4-1, in a location where screams wouldn't wake the other trainees or alert the duty officer. "Time for a real conversation, Rodriguez," Jake said, his voice low and menacing. "You've been disrespecting me and my crew since you got here. That stops now, or things are going to get very unpleasant for you." He stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over her in an attempt at physical intimidation. Maya assessed the tactical situation with practiced calm. 4 opponents, narrow corridor, limited escape routes, no weapons visible but potential improvised weapons within reach. The attackers were showing classic signs of amateur aggression. Tense shoulders, elevated breathing, poor spacing that would allow her to engage them individually rather than as a coordinated unit. "I haven't disrespected anyone," Maya replied in a steady voice that carried no trace of fear. "I've just been doing my job and helping others do theirs better." Her response was designed to give them one last chance to reconsider their course of action, before she was forced to demonstrate just how outmatched they really were. "Your job is to show proper respect to your superiors," Tony sneered, emboldened by the pack mentality and the perceived advantage of numbers. "And that means acknowledging that Jake is in charge here, not some show-off who got lucky on the obstacle course." Maya could see that reasoning and de-escalation were no longer viable options. These trainees had committed to a confrontation that would only end when their ability to threaten her was definitively removed. She took a deep breath and prepared to give them a lesson they would never forget about the difference between playing soldier and being one. Jake made the first move, lunging forward with his hands outstretched to grab Maya's shoulders and slam her against the wall. It was exactly the kind of aggressive but clumsy attack she had expected from someone with no real combat training. Maya sidestepped smoothly, grabbed Jake's extended wrist, and used his momentum against him in a textbook Aikido throw that sent him crashing into the wall he had intended for her. The sound of Jake hitting the concrete was loud enough to momentarily startle his accomplices, giving Maya the opening she needed to address the next threat. Marcus stepped forward to help his leader, but Maya was already moving. She swept his legs out from under him with a precise kick while simultaneously striking his solar plexus with her palm, dropping him to the floor, gasping for breath. Tony and David realized too late that they were not dealing with a helpless victim. Tony swung wildly at Maya's head, but she ducked under his punch and delivered a sharp elbow to his ribs that sent him stumbling backward. Before David could react, Maya had spun around and caught him with a controlled strike to his shoulder that numbed his entire arm and made any further aggressive action impossible. The entire confrontation lasted less than 30 seconds. 4 grown men, who had considered themselves tough and intimidating, were now on the floor, groaning and trying to figure out what had just happened to them. Maya stood over them, barely breathing hard, with an expression that was calm but unmistakably dangerous. "Let me explain something to all of you," Maya said in a quiet voice that carried absolute authority. "I spent 6 years as a Navy SEAL. I've fought in places you can't pronounce against enemies who would eat you for breakfast. I've been shot at, blown up, and hunted by people who kill for a living. Do you really think 4 untrained teenagers are going to intimidate me?" Jake tried to get up, but Maya placed her foot firmly on his chest and pressed just hard enough to keep him pinned without causing real damage. "I came here for specialized training in civilian integration after active duty. I wasn't looking for trouble. But you decided to make me your target. That was a serious mistake in judgment." The revelation that she was active military personnel hit the 4 attackers like a physical blow. They had not only assaulted a fellow trainee but had potentially committed a crime against a service member with years of classified experience and connections they couldn't begin to imagine. "Please don't report this," Marcus wheezed from the floor, finally understanding the enormity of what they had attempted. "We didn't know. We thought you were just another recruit. We were just messing around." His plea was pathetic compared to the confident threats he had been making just minutes earlier. "Messing around?" Maya's voice carried an edge of steel that made all four men shiver. "You planned an ambush. You waited until you thought I was isolated and vulnerable. You intended to use physical force to intimidate and control me. That's not messing around. That's assault with intent to commit battery." David was holding his numbed arm and staring at Maya with new understanding. "You could have seriously hurt us," he said quietly. "Why didn't you?" It was a question born from genuine curiosity rather than gratitude, as he began to comprehend just how much restraint she had actually shown. "Because, despite your stupidity, you're still American service members in training," Maya replied. "I don't hurt my own people unless they give me absolutely no choice. But that protection has limits, and you've already crossed several of them tonight." She looked down at each of them in turn, making sure they understood the gravity of their situation. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return to your bunks immediately. You're going to stop harassing other trainees, not just me. You're going to focus on becoming better soldiers instead of playing dominance games. And if any of you ever threatens me or anyone else in this camp again, I will end your military careers before they even begin." Jake finally found his voice, though it came out as more of a croak than his usual confident tone. "How can you just end our careers? You're not even an instructor here." Even defeated and humiliated, his ego was struggling to accept the reality of his position. Maya smiled, but there was no warmth in it whatsoever. "Jake Morrison, service number 447-1829, from Denver, Colorado. Your father works for the city water department, and your mother is a nurse at Presbyterian Hospital. You have two younger sisters named Amy and Jessica, and you've been telling everyone that you're going to be special forces despite barely passing your physical fitness tests." The specific details about his personal life made Jake's blood run cold. Having that information meant Maya had access to databases and intelligence networks that were far beyond anything a normal trainee should possess. The implications of what kind of connections she might have began to dawn on him with terrifying clarity. "I know things about all of you," Maya continued, addressing the group. "I know your backgrounds, your families, your plans, and your weaknesses. That's what real soldiers do. We gather intelligence before we act. You've been playing games while I've been treating this as a genuine threat assessment." She stepped back and allowed Jake to sit up, though her posture remained ready for immediate action if any of them tried something stupid again. "Tomorrow morning, you're going to apologize to every trainee you've been harassing. You're going to help people instead of hurting them. And you're going to remember that respect is earned through competence and character, not through fear and intimidation." The four defeated bullies struggled to their feet, each nursing minor injuries and major damage to their pride. They had learned in the most direct way possible that their victim was actually their superior in every way that mattered in military life. As they slunk back toward the barracks, Maya knew that word of this encounter would spread quickly through the trainee population. By morning, the entire dynamic of the training camp had shifted dramatically. Word of the midnight confrontation had spread through whispered conversations in the mess hall and hushed discussions during morning preparations. The details grew slightly more dramatic with each retelling, but the core message remained consistent. Maya Rodriguez was not someone to be underestimated or threatened. Jake and his former followers appeared at breakfast looking subdued and sporting various minor bruises that they claimed came from training accidents. Their previous swagger had been replaced by careful deference, particularly when Maya entered the dining area. The contrast between their current behavior and yesterday's aggressive posturing was noticed by everyone present. "Good morning, Rodriguez," Jake said quietly as Maya passed his table. His voice carried none of its former mockery, replaced instead by genuine respect mixed with healthy caution. "I wanted to apologize for yesterday. We were out of line, and it won't happen again." Maya nodded acknowledgement but didn't stop to engage in extended conversation. She had made her point effectively, and prolonged discussion would only create more drama that could interfere with the training program. Her goal had never been to humiliate anyone permanently, just to establish clear boundaries that would allow everyone to focus on their actual purpose for being there. Throughout the day, other trainees approached Maya with newfound respect and curiosity. Sarah Chen, who had asked for help with rope climbing techniques, brought several friends who were struggling with various aspects of the physical training. Maya found herself becoming an unofficial mentor, sharing practical tips and encouragement with those who genuinely wanted to improve. "I've never seen anyone handle a situation like that," said Kevin Park, a trainee from California who had witnessed Jake's group getting dressed down after their failed ambush. "Most people would have either backed down or gone straight to the instructors. You handled it like a real soldier." "Sometimes the best way to end a conflict is to demonstrate that escalating it would be extremely unwise," Maya replied while showing Kevin proper form for pull-ups. "But the goal should always be to resolve problems, not create bigger ones." Sergeant Williams observed these interactions with growing interest throughout the week. Maya's influence on the other trainees was overwhelmingly positive, and the overall atmosphere of the camp had improved significantly since her arrival. Bullying incidents had dropped to nearly zero, and trainees were helping each other instead of competing destructively. During Friday's evaluation session, Sergeant Williams called Maya to his office for a private conversation. "Rodriguez, I've been reviewing your file more carefully. Your performance here has been exemplary, but I'm curious about your background. Your records show previous military experience, but many of the details are classified above my clearance level." Maya maintained her professional demeanor while choosing her words carefully. "I served in Naval Special Operations for 6 years, Sergeant. I'm here for transition training to help me adjust to civilian contractor work. The specifics of my previous assignments are indeed classified." "I see." Sergeant Williams nodded thoughtfully. "That explains quite a bit about your capabilities and your positive influence on the other trainees. Would you be interested in taking on a more formal mentoring role? We have several recruits who could benefit from guidance from someone with your experience." The offer was tempting, and Maya could see the value in helping young service members develop proper discipline and teamwork skills. "I'd be honored to help, Sergeant, but my transition training has a specific timeline. I can assist informally while I'm here, but I won't be available for a permanent position." Over the following weeks, Maya became the unofficial leader that Jake had pretended to be. Trainees sought her advice on everything from physical training techniques to handling interpersonal conflicts. Her quiet competence and genuine desire to help others succeed created an environment where everyone could improve without fear of harassment or ridicule. Jake himself underwent a remarkable transformation during this period. Stripped of his false authority and forced to confront his own limitations, he began focusing seriously on his training for the first time. Maya even helped him improve his obstacle course performance, offering constructive criticism and practical techniques that his ego had previously prevented him from accepting. "I was really stupid when you first got here," Jake admitted during a rope climbing session where Maya was helping him improve his technique. "I thought being tough meant pushing people around instead of helping them get better. You showed me what real leadership actually looks like." "Everyone makes mistakes," Maya replied as she demonstrated proper hand positioning. "What matters is learning from them and becoming better. You have potential, Jake. You just need to channel it in the right direction." As Maya's time at the training camp neared its end, the farewell gathering organized by the other trainees demonstrated how completely the social dynamics had changed. Instead of the fractured, competitive environment that had existed before her arrival, the group had become a cohesive unit focused on mutual improvement and support. "You changed everything here," Sarah Chen said during the informal ceremony. "Not just by being incredibly skilled, but by showing us how to treat each other properly. This place is going to be different because of what you taught us." Maya looked around at the faces of young men and women who had grown significantly during their time together. Jake was helping Marcus practice combat techniques instead of bullying him. Tony was tutoring struggling trainees in academic subjects. David had become a reliable team player who put group success ahead of personal recognition. "You all did the changing yourselves," Maya replied sincerely. "I just helped create an environment where you could become who you were meant to be. Remember that. When new trainees arrive, be the leaders they need, not the bullies they fear." As Maya departed Camp Wilson with her duffel bag and orders for her next assignment, she knew she was leaving behind a group of trainees who would carry forward the lessons they had learned about real leadership, mutual respect, and the difference between being tough and being strong. The ripple effects of those lessons would influence military personnel for years to come, creating better soldiers and better people in the process.